Okay. Have you ever had that moment
Yeah.
where you're like trying to write something important, like a really important email or even just a text message, and you just can't get the words right? You know what you want to say, but it all comes out like jumbled and weird.
Totally.
Well, get ready, because today we're going deep, deep, deep into how to make your writing better.
That's right.
And trust me, you are going to pick up some seriously useful stuff. We're going way beyond just basic grammar rules here.
Yeah, we are.
We're going to be uncovering all those little secrets that make good writing, well, good. We're talking reading habits, goal setting,
Absolutely.
even techniques those famous authors use. It's all in here.
You know, it's amazing how much of a difference good writing can actually make. It's really a skill that anyone can improve no matter where they're starting from. And I think maybe a good place to start is by sort of busting a myth that a lot of people have. They think that good writing equals fancy vocabulary.
Right, yeah.
But honestly, the most important thing is just being clear, getting your point across.
Okay, so like using simple words doesn't automatically make your writing like basic.
Exactly. It's not about using the biggest words you can find in a thesaurus. It's more like choosing the right word for what you're trying to say.
Gotcha.
I like to think of it kind of like cooking. You know, if you only had one spice in your kitchen, everything would taste exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a bigger vocabulary, it's like having this whole spice rack full of flavors to work with.
Oh, I like that.
You can be way more precise with what you're trying to say.
So it's less about sounding smart and more about like actually getting your meaning across clearly.
Exactly.
I'm into it. And you know what? The source we're looking at today, it actually has this whole challenge to help us like expand our vocabulary.
Oh, tell me about it.
So the idea is you learn a few new words every day, which already sounds kind of daunting, but the key is to actually use them.
Yeah, don't just let them sit there in your brain.
Right, like try actually slipping them into conversations, emails, you know, whatever.
Put them to work.
Exactly. It's like giving those new words a workout so they actually stick.
Use them or lose them.
Okay, so we've got our vocab expanding, which is great. But we can't forget about the kind of foundation of good writing, right? We got to talk grammar.
Oh, absolutely. You could have the most amazing vocabulary in the world.
Yeah.
But if your sentences are like full of grammar mistakes, people aren't going to take you seriously.
Ouch. Yeah. Nothing like a misplaced comma or a misspelled word to totally ruin a good point.
It's true.
I've been there for sure.
Me too.
But luckily, the source we're looking at, it has a super clever tip for getting those grammar rules down, Pat.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Flashcards?
No way, seriously. Those things from like grade school.
Yep. They're not just for kids anymore.
I love it.
Apparently, they're actually like a really great way to like learn and remember those grammar rules.
Huh. That makes sense.
And the best part, you can use them anywhere. Waiting for the bus, flip through a few flashcards, lunch break, quiz yourself on subject-verb agreement.
Micro-learning at its finest. I'm totally going to try that.
Right. It's perfect for, you know, us busy folks.
Absolutely.
All right. So vocab and grammar, check and check.
The building blocks.
What's next on our writing mastery adventure?
Okay, now this is where things get interesting. Ready to talk about reading.
Wait, reading? But we're here to talk about writing.
I know, but trust me on this one. Reading is like this secret weapon for leveling up your writing skills.
Okay, but I read all the time. Does that mean I'm like automatically a great writer now?
Well, not quite. It's not just about passively taking in the words. You got to be an active reader.
Active? What does that mean?
It means paying attention to how those really skilled writers are doing their thing. How do they build those sentences?
Yeah.
How do they create suspense? How do they use words to paint those vivid pictures in your mind?
So it's like less about just enjoying the story and more about figuring out how they built the story.
Exactly. You're peeking behind the curtain, seeing the nuts and bolts of what makes good writing work.
So it's like instead of just admiring a finished house, you're studying the blueprints.
Perfect analogy. You're looking at the structure, the materials, how it all fits together.
I like it. And you know what? This source actually recommends trying something kind of cool. They say to pick one of your favorite authors and like really dissect their work.
Oh, interesting.
Pay attention to their sentence structure, the words they choose, how they create characters, build arguments, all that stuff.
It's like having a masterclass in writing, but without the hefty price tag.
Exactly. And there's even the suggestion of literally copying out passages by hand.
Whoa, really? Like back in the day?
Yep. They say it helps you really get a feel for the author's style, kind of like tracing over an artist's work to understand their brushstrokes.
Makes sense. So we're absorbing their techniques, not their ideas.
Right. Obviously, we're not talking about plagiarizing here, just using this as a tool to learn.
Okay, good clarification.
So yeah, we've got our vocab growing, grammar skills getting sharper, and now our reading habits are becoming more, well, active.
We're making progress.
We are. But there's still this one thing, Even with all these tools, sometimes just starting to write feels impossible.
Ugh, the blank page. The writer's worst enemy.
Right. It can be super intimidating.
I hear. But here's the thing, even tiny steps, if you do them consistently, they add up over time.
Okay.
The key is to make writing a habit, something you do regularly.
I knew you were going to say that. The daily writing habit. I gotta be honest, that sounds kind of scary. What if some days I have absolutely nothing to write about?
That's where journaling comes in handy.
Journaling, huh?
Think of it like a low-pressure space where you can experiment, play around with language, try out different ideas, develop your voice.
So it's like my own little writing playground where no one else is watching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can just let loose, try new things, and not worry about being perfect.
That actually sounds kind of fun.
It is. And you never know, you might just stumble upon some great ideas for your real writing too.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. This source also compared building a writing habit to working out a muscle.
I love that.
They said even just 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference over time.
So true. It's not about churning out pages and pages. It's about showing up consistently.
Consistency is key.
Exactly. All right, so we've got our vocab expanding, grammar skills sharpening, reading habits getting more active, and we're making time for daily writing. What else is there? All right, welcome back to our writing deep dive. So in the last part, we talked about building that strong foundation.
Yeah, like getting those basics down.
Exactly. But a house needs more than just a good foundation, right? You need walls, windows, a roof, all that stuff.
You're talking about structure. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, even if you have the best ideas in the world,
Right.
if they're not organized in a way that makes sense, your writing is going to be all over the place.
Exactly. It'll be a jumbled mess. Nobody wants to read that. It's like going to a restaurant, right? And the menu is just this random list of ingredients with no headings or categories or anything.
Ugh, that would be so confusing.
Right. It'd be overwhelming.
Totally.
And the same goes for writing. You got to guide the reader through your ideas so they can actually follow what you're trying to say.
Makes sense. And speaking of guidance, this source actually talks a lot about outlining. Do you ever use outlines when you write?
Oh, all the time. Outlining is like my secret weapon.
Really?
It helps me get all my thoughts organized before I even start putting words on the page. It's kind of like creating a roadmap for your writing,
Okay.
You can see the big picture, figure out how your ideas flow together, make sure you're not missing any key points.
Oh, so it's like having a blueprint for your writing project.
Exactly. Plus, it can save you a ton of time when you get to the editing stage later on.
Oh, that's always a good thing. Okay, so outlining is our blueprint. We've got that down. But what about the actual construction of our writing? How do we make sure our sentences are clear, easy to understand?
That's where grammar and punctuation come in. Think of them like your tools.
Our tools.
Yeah, the tools that help you build strong, well-constructed sentences.
Okay.
Like one little misplaced comma can totally change the meaning of a whole sentence, right?
Oh, for sure.
And a missing period can leave the reader totally lost.
Yeah, it's like those optical illusions where one tiny line can make the whole image look different.
Exactly. And just like a builder needs to know how to use a hammer and saw, a writer needs to know how to use grammar and punctuation the right way.
Makes sense. And the source actually had this whole thing about using active voice whenever possible. What's so special about active voice?
Well, let me give you an example. Imagine you're reading this sentence, the ball was thrown by the boy. Grammatically, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it feels kind of passive and lifeless, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Now compare that to the boy threw the ball.
Oh, yeah.
Way more direct, more engaging, and it puts the focus on the action.
Yeah, I see that. It's like the difference between watching a play and reading the stage directions.
Yes. One brings the action to life.
And the other just describes it.
Exactly. That's what active voice does. Makes your writing more dynamic, pulls the reader in.
Okay, so we've talked about structure, grammar, active voice. What else do we need to think about when we're actually writing?
Now we got to talk about style.
Style, huh?
Style is what makes your writing yours. It's what makes it unique and memorable.
Okay, but isn't there a right way to write? Like, shouldn't we all be aiming for, I don't know, a certain level of formality?
There are definitely like conventions and standards, especially in certain types of writing, like if you're writing for school or for work.
Right.
But ultimately, style is about finding what feels authentic to you. Like what feels true to your voice.
So it's kind of like having your own signature dish, something that people recognize as uniquely yours.
Exactly. And just like there are a million ways to cook a delicious meal, there are endless possibilities when it comes to writing style.
That's cool. Okay, so how do we even begin to develop our own style?
Well, I think a good starting point is to think about those writers who you really admire.
Yeah.
What is it about their writing that speaks to you? Is it their sense of humor? The way they use language to create emotion?
Okay, and once you've figured out what you like, how do you actually, use that in your own writing?
That's where the fun part comes in. Experiment. Don't be afraid to try different techniques, play around with different sentence structures,
So it's more about discovery than following a set of rules.
Totally. It's all about finding what feels natural to you as a writer.
Okay, I can dig that.
Yeah.
And you know what else can make your writing really stand out? Adding in some sensory detail, some imagery.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody wants to read something that feels dry and lifeless.
Right.
We want to feel like we're there in the scene, experiencing it all.
Right, and this source had some great tips for doing that.
Oh, yeah.
It all starts with being specific. Like, instead of just saying the flowers were beautiful, you describe their colors, their shapes, maybe even how they smell.
Right. Think about the texture of the petals, the way the light hits them.
It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually biting into a warm cookie.
Ooh, yes.
One gives you the basic information, the other is a whole experience.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Me too. And the source also talked about using figurative language, like metaphors and similes.
Yeah, those can really add some depth.
Totally. So instead of just saying the wind was strong, you could say something like, the wind howled like a banshee.
Much more evocative. It creates a stronger image in the reader's mind.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered structure, style, imagery. What's the final ingredient in our writing recipe?
This one's a little harder to pin down, but it's what really makes writing sing.
Voice.
Voice.
What does that even mean?
It's that intangible quality that makes your writing sound like, well, you.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly. It's your personality, your perspective, your unique way of looking at the world.
So how do you even find your voice? Is it something you're just born with, or can you actually develop it?
It's kind of a mix of both. I think everyone has a unique voice inside them, but it takes practice to really let it shine through in your writing.
So don't try to sound like someone else, just be yourself.
Exactly. Embrace your quirks, your sense of humor, the things that make you, well, you.
That's what makes writing interesting to read.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. It feels like we've gone from building the foundation all the way to putting on the finishing touches.
We've definitely made some progress, but there are a few more essential things we need to talk about before we wrap up our writing deep dive.
Oh, like what?
We got to talk about the power of storytelling, why it's so important to know your audience, and how to create a compelling call to action. All that good stuff.
Okay, I am so ready for part 3. Okay, welcome back to our writing deep dive. We've covered so much ground already.
I know, right? It's been a whirlwind.
It has. But I feel like we're finally getting to the, really juicy stuff.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it all comes together.
Okay, so remind me, where did we leave off?
We were talking about finding your voice, that unique style that makes your writing stand out.
Right. And now we're going to talk about something that can take your writing from good to, completely captivating.
A magic ingredient?
No.
Storytelling.
Storytelling. But hold on, what if I'm not writing, fiction? Does storytelling still apply to things like, emails or reports or whatever?
Oh, totally. Think about it. Even in a simple email, you're trying to get your message across.
Right.
You're trying to maybe persuade someone to do something, or you're sharing an experience.
Okay.
That's a story.
I never thought about it that way.
It's all about how you frame it.
So how do we actually, weave storytelling into our everyday writing?
One way is to think about the classic elements of a story. You've got your character, conflict, rising action,
Yeah.
climax, resolution.
Okay, but how would you apply that to, a blog post about time management?
All right, so your character could be the reader, right? They're struggling to balance their work and life. The conflict is their lack of time, all the stress they're feeling. Rising action, you introduce all these cool time management techniques. The climax, they put those techniques into practice and they actually start seeing results.
Yeah.
And the resolution, they feel calmer, more in control.
Wow, okay, that actually makes so much sense. It's like you're not just giving information, you're taking the reader on a little journey.
Exactly.
I like it. The source also talked about the power of personal anecdotes. Like, why are those so important?
Personal stories make your writing way more relatable and engaging.
Right.
They create a connection with the reader.
It's like, would you rather listen to a dry lecture about history or hear actual stories about the people who lived through it?
Oh, stories for sure.
Exactly. They make it real.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got storytelling. What else do we need to keep in mind?
Knowing your audience, like really understanding who you're writing for, it's so important.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Before you even start writing, ask yourself, who is this for?
Yeah.
What are they interested in? What kind of language will resonate with them?
It's like you wouldn't use the same tone and style for a group of kindergartners as you would for a room full of CEOs, right?
Exactly. Different audiences need different approaches.
And it's not just about like tone and style, right? It's about knowing what they need, what problems you're trying to solve for them.
You got to put yourself in their shoes and figure out what they want to hear, not just what you want to say.
Right. Which brings us to that last point from the source, the call to action.
Every piece of writing, no matter what it is, should have a purpose.
Yeah. So what do you want the reader to do after they're done reading?
Tell them.
Don't be shy about it.
Exactly. Do you want them to visit your website? Sign up for your email list? Leave a comment?
Be clear, be specific.
And don't be afraid to get a little creative with it. A good call to action can really stick with the reader.
Wow. Okay, we have covered so much in this deep dive. It's been amazing.
It really has. We've talked about everything from grammar to storytelling to voice. It's been a journey.
But beyond all the techniques and rules, I think the biggest takeaway for me is to just remember how fun writing can be.
Yes, exactly. Don't get so caught up in the rules that you forget to enjoy the process.
Right. Experiment, play around with language, see what happens.
And remember, writing is a skill. The more you practice, the better you'll get.
So true. So what are you waiting for? Pick up that pen, open that laptop, and start writing.
You never know what amazing things you might create.